Welcome back to TAO Talk, the weekly blockmate show recapping all the news in the Bittensor ecosystem. I'm your host, 563, joined always by my co-host, Brody from Onchain Outpost. This week we have a special guest, Mike, managing partner at Contango. Hey, how's it going, guys?
Doing well. How are you doing, Mike?
Me.
Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Can't
yeah,
complain.
Mike, let's jump in with a quick intro. How'd you get started with crypto? How'd you get started with Bittensor? What got you TAO pilled? Let's give the folks a quick background.
Yeah. So, I got into the crypto space in 2016. Really was a bit of a gold bug beforehand. And so when I found Bitcoin, it just made a lot of sense and kind of got Bitcoin pilled pretty early, fell down the rabbit hole, never came out. And so figured out pretty quickly I wanted to make crypto my full-time job. Started a digital media company called Crypto Weekly in 2017, sold it in 2023, but really did a few other things in the crypto space. Started an online course called Bitcoin 101 that did very well to my surprise, and got seen by 13,000 people around a handful of different countries. And so it was kind of the proof in the pudding that this is really the industry for me and this is where I should spend a lot of my time. Started getting into the angel investing space, did some liquid token investing. My business partner Josh was doing the same thing around the same time in 2021, and so we joined forces and we founded Contango. Contango is first and foremost a venture capital firm. We invest specifically at the intersection of blockchain and AI. And in the process of developing our fund, came across Bittensor in mid 2023, and same thing with Bitcoin, got pretty TAO pilled pretty quickly. It just felt like it was one of those ecosystems. Obviously, as a venture capitalist, you see thousands of different projects, and we're meeting companies and founders every single day, but it's not very often you come across a new technology that you think is truly net new, revolutionary in its own space, and pretty much has the sky is a limit. And so got really deep into Bittensor, figured it's more than an asset we should just have in our fund. It's something we should really build a business around. And so we started a subsidiary company called General TAO Ventures, which is specifically focused on kind of shepherding some of our portfolio companies in the blockchain AI space into Bittensor, helping them incubate subnets, helping them set up mining operations, even set up validators, and really just creating this kind of collective umbrella across a number of different subnets, a number of different ecosystem participants, and kind of sharing in the value that Bittensor brings. So that's a big focus of ours right now, and really scaling up operations quickly.
Love it.
Very nice.
Good to hear it. But yeah, let's jump right into it. Let me grab notes. So I think the biggest news from this week was the subnet limit was increased from 45 to 52. What did you guys think of this? I know we're scaling up to 64 subnets this year. This is one step in the direction. Do you think there's going to be a lot more interest in, getting registered in these new slots?
If Joseph Jacks is any indication of what the future holds for Bittensor, then he would argue that hundreds of thousands of subnets will be here within the next few years. According to him, everything can be a Bittensor subnet. And I've started to kind of drift in that camp, but I don't know, Mike, what's your opinion?
Look, I agree with that. I think there will be thousands of subnets within the next few years. Really, the benefit of a subnet is it's a marketplace for anything you want, right? Any type of digital commodity or digital super commodity you want. So if you, as a business unit, even have something specific you really want to fine tune, or you really want to train, or you really want to build, you need resources for it, you can spin up a subnet and have multiple computers around the world doing the work for you. And I think one of the things that really was a light bulb moment for me in the Bittensor ecosystem is if you look at the amount of value in the Ethereum ecosystem, it's far greater than just the Ethereum token, right? There's, I don't know how many tens of thousands of tokens on Ethereum now. They all have their own market caps. They all have their own FTVs, but all of that value doesn't flow back into Ethereum. And I think what's really interesting about subnet architecture is that even post DTAO, when we have subnet tokens, all of the value is really tied to the underlying TAO token. And so when we do have thousands of different sublets, just like we had proliferation of tens of thousands of ERC20 tokens, all of that value that's built within the ecosystem, as opposed to being, diffused into thousands of different new tokens, all flows back into TAO. And so I think there are millions of different use cases, things that we haven't even discovered yet. Those will all be put into subnets, and those will all be kind of executed to the betterment of the entire network.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. I mean, anything that you can incentivize can essentially be like a subnet of Bittensor. Kind of on the point of that you made, where all of the value flows back into TAO with all of these DTAO implementations or tokens, so to speak. That kind of introduces another variable when you start to have your own token for your subnet on Ethereum. So it's going to be kind of interesting to see how the general ecosystem decides, the value that these other ERC20 tokens or SPLs or whatever they are, basically these dual tokens for subnets, and how that value is going to transfer back to TAO. So I don't know, that's an interesting conversation. I don't know, 563, we've been talking about this a little bit, and maybe it's a little off topic and we don't have to go super deep into it, but wanted to give you the opportunity to comment on that.
Yeah, I think really goes back to what you were saying, Mike. All of these super commodities that exist in a far future where there's thousands of subnets, all those DTAO tokens make up the value of TAO in aggregate, right? So it all just flows back to TAO eventually. But I'm really excited for how the market is going to value each of these different commodities that are being put off by the different subnets. And the growth here is just the beginning. So I'm excited. One thing I do want to talk about, and people ask it all the time, is how do you start playing around with these subnets? Okay, Bittensor is cool and all, but what do you actually do with it? How can I, as a user, go and play around? So I wanted to bring up a couple of tools that folks can start playing around with. One's Corcell's Playground over here. Folks don't know, Corcell is one of the large validators on the network. They have this really cool front end where you can start playing around with different subnets, whether that's text prompting. You can play around with some text to image tools. You can do AI detection with Subnet 32. And so Corcell is one of them. And then there's also TAObot that has a similar tool, just a different layout and different interface here. Have you guys played around with these? Do you think these are useful to get people onboarded? What do you think?
Totally. These are awesome.
Great tools. I've been using Corcell actually pretty religiously for the last, 8 months. And it's just incredible to see the rate of innovation. These guys are, continuously shipping new products and, adding new subnets to the architecture. I can give you a couple other examples, like Sybil from Manifold Labs is a great search engine. Yep. Albert by the LogicNet team, Subnet 35 is a great math and logical reasoning kind of AI architecture. And there's even things that you can use on Twitter or Telegram, like the Make It a Quote bot by Social Tensor, Subnet 23. I'm pretty sure has something around in the magnitude of 15 million impressions per week. And those, a lot of people don't realize when they're seeing these, because they just look like, an image post on Twitter, but it's starting to get picked up by celebrities and, Barstool Sports and some really, really cool just, you know, people are using it that don't really even know they're using a Bittensor subnet. So I think that's where you've really made it, is when people start using it and they don't even know they're using Bittensor.
The first time I saw the quote powered by Bittensor, it was like a quote of Shoe Nice, the guy who eats like sticks of deodorant and stuff. And I saw that and I was like, there's no way. Like, well, how did this happen? Like, who created this?
You thought I was trolling.
Because I thought you were trolling. I thought like that this generated millions of impressions and such good just marketing opportunity for Bittensor, and it's a hilarious name. So I think it's really important, for people to really kind of see what is actually being produced on Bittensor, because a lot of the questions that I get asked are, you know, how do I actually use this stuff? So I'm really excited to kind of dig into every single one of these instances of, or every single one of these front ends, and compile all of them and aggregate them, and, you know, maybe write a post about it, and towel more people who, you know, are seeking a perplexity alternative in Sybil, right? That's just one example. So there's a lot of decentralized alternatives that we can use that are more censorship resistant, more private, and we should be using them and supporting our fellow builders in the space.
Can I just make one more comment? And, you know, I want to thank you guys for what you guys are doing with TAO Talk, because I think activations like this are extremely important, especially in the early days of Bittensor, given OpenTensor is kind of taking an arm's length view. They're not doing marketing because, you know, really Bittensor is an open protocol, and they shouldn't necessarily be the ones that are pioneering, or I guess, doing the marketing or doing the promotions of the network. It should be everybody, right? And so I think this is really important, what you guys are doing. I also think, you know, some of the things like Subnet 23's make it a quote are extremely important, because they're driving eyeballs to Bittensor, and people, you know, if they see it enough, they'll say, hey, you know, what is this, right? And so these marketing initiatives, whether that they're through Subnets or just through podcasts like this, I think are incredibly important. I think more people should think about, if you're really Taupilled and you really believe in the ecosystem, you know, start something. The days are still so early, and you know, I'm sure it's a great way to build a great network and a great following.
Well, thanks, man.
That means a lot.
We just sit and yap about things we like to talk about with cool people. So thanks for joining.
That's what I do all day.
Yeah, but speaking about projects that are like really making a name for themselves in the marketing side, I wanted to bring up BitMind, who's working over on Subnet 34 on deepfake detection. They had a pretty interesting strategic partnership announcement. They partnered with David Lawee and Ala, the co-founder of Bittensor. I just was curious, Mike, have you seen like advisorships or partnerships like this in the past? Do you think this is going to be more common going forward?
Definitely. I have seen these in the past. I think one, I've spoken to Ken many times. He's a great founder. I think specifically, you know, with bringing in Ala, it's great stamp of approval for the ecosystem. But I also just think Ala has the right to, you know, put his money where his mouth is on products that he thinks are useful, not only to the network, but to the world, right? And so I do suspect, as registration cost continues to climb, there will be more and more of these partnerships needed, whether that they're, you know, individual investors or venture fund investors coming in to raise a round specifically for the lock cost of the registration. I see that becoming much more, you know, commonplace. We've had these advisory relationships with 2 of our subnets. 5 of our portfolio companies have set up subnets. We have direct interest in 2 of them outside of the parent company, and we have a third kind of in the hopper right now. So that's really the business model that we've pioneered as well. I think it's useful from both sides, given you need the technical team and you need Bittensor specific engineers to kind of come together and work through the I guess new problems of what is a subnet and what does subnet architecture look like. But then you also need this other kind of amorphous side, which is more political, more kind of speaking with validators, helping to get the word out about what you guys are building, staying up to date in the community, keeping your Discord up to date and your documentation in order. So there's a lot that goes into building a subnet. And I think if you have a team that's specifically focused on the technical implementation, you also need to have a team that's focused on the political side, that's focused on the marketing side, and really the community management side. And so that's why I think these are great partnerships, and there will definitely be more of them in the future.
Agree with that wholeheartedly with everything you said. I feel like in the early stages, being pretty tunnel vision on the technical implementation worked, but now with things becoming so much more competitive, it's going to be important for these subnets to develop a marketing arm, to develop that investor relations arm, everything of that sort that you just described. And General TAO Ventures is really well positioned to help a lot of these subnets, given your experience, being an entrepreneur as yourself, being incredibly deep within the AI ecosystem holistically, and now finding yourself going further down the Bittensor rabbit hole. So yeah, if you're a subnet who's, or if you're a developer who's looking to launch their own subnet and is, Bittensor curious, I'm sure Mike would love to chat with you too.
Absolutely.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm silly.
No, I think it's a good point, because I think every subnet is going to have a BD team going forward. They kind of have to, especially when it's all holder driven, how they're getting their emissions. You can't just do these backroom deals with validators anymore. You have to get you have to get your name out there. You have to get your work out there. You have to advertise for Bittensor, for your subnet. You have to play those games. And I think that's just great for the network, because it gets more eyeballs on, like you were saying, Mike.
Yeah.
And, or you could just build a make it a quote bot. You could just build a make it a quote bot and have the community market.
Well, it's a different marketing game, right? I think
totally
different strategies are going to emerge.
But even with make it a quote being at 15 some odd million impressions a week, it doesn't matter to them if they don't have weight, right? And so they not only need to market to the general pop, but they also need to market to the validators and the people that are actually that hold the keys to their potential emissions
for the next few months.
For the next few months, for sure. I remember when there was a 32 max cap on subnets. On one of our projects, it took us 3 times re-registering to finally get emissions and get back up out of that deregistration zone, because with a 7-day immunity period, that's like, you got to stand up the whole subnet. It's got to be working. All the developers, have to have great documentation. You have to onboard your validators. You have to kind of lobby for weight on different validators. There's a lot that needs to be done in that first week. And if people don't know who you are, it's difficult for them to get comfortable enough to throw you weight in those first 7 days. So third time was the charm for us on 35, but we've taken a lot of suggestions from the community, and I think built a really great product. And now I think the emissions show for that.
Love to hear it. Yeah, I wanted to highlight Dippy. They just announced they're hitting a base of 280,000 monthly active users. That's some crazy numbers. For folks that don't know, Dippy, they run Subnet 11. They work on basically, like, if anyone's ever heard of character AI, they're role-playing LLMs. So it's an app on your phone, and you can talk to these different personalities, and they all have their own personality, their own way of speaking, and they've just killed it, apparently. Yeah, what do you guys think? Do you think this is reasonable? Do you think this is something that helps the Bittensor ecosystem? Is this something that we need, like an open source version of?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say the market opportunity for chatbots like this is huge. I mean, if A16Z, I think they raised an entire fund, or they raised several hundred millions of dollars pointed directly at initiatives like this. So yeah, it's really important that there's an open sourced alternative because, yeah, I mean, you get into a situation where it's kind of like Blade Runner. Enjoy
Mm.
the AI model is just forked over to everyone who's, you know, leeching all of your data. So it's really important that, you know, people are having these really private conversations with AI bots, that data is, you know, protected and private. So
For sure. I think just massive market opportunity in the chatbot space, in the agent space. I don't know if you guys know, but in 2022, bot traffic on the internet surpassed human traffic on the internet. And by
Wow.
2025, 90% of all traffic on the internet will be bots. So
makes sense.
this is massive. Like, I think most people don't really understand the scale of how quickly AI is coming. And I think especially the younger generation are starting to become more native speaking to AI, whether that's their own kind of personal assistant, whether that's, you know, voice command texts in their phone, whether that's just having communications with like their Snapchat friend or whatever, the AI Snapchat friend.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's becoming so much more native for the younger generation, and I think the proof is in the pudding here with the 280K monthly active users. There's a lot of people that are searching for these alternatives. But as you said, Brody, like, you need an open source alternative. You need to be in control of your own data, especially if you're going to be revealing personal sensitive information.
Yeah.
Completely agree. So congrats to the Dippy team. Keep building. Excited for you guys. But next up, I wanted to shout out a couple of the tech updates that we saw this week. We had both Manifold and Namaray announce some SDKs for builders. And I'm not going to LARP on the dev side, but I think Brody, you dug a little bit into
Yeah.
what the differences are between these two upgrades. But basically, it's what are the security updates, and it helps like new builders onboard, right?
Yeah. So want to make a clear distinction. These aren't necessarily SDKs, they're more just networking protocols and
Okay.
networking frameworks that are optimized for prioritizing like DDoS protection. So yeah, basically two of them are, you know, the same but different. They overlap a little bit and they're trying to create a much more secure, quicker, efficient networking protocol for, you know, people or peers and parties specifically within Bittensor, and also clients on the application side external to Bittensor to make it much easier for them to kind of interact with the various Bittensor APIs and actually use the intelligence being produced. So without going too deep into the details, at a very high level, like these are both, you know, really strong initiatives that are building, you know, new open source networking protocols, both with their own unique use case and application to the Bittensor ecosystem. And I believe that various parts of the original Bittensor stack are going to continuously be improved upon. And this is just one example of such cases. So yeah, really cool. Good work, Namaray and Manifold, for creating these two pieces of tech that I'm sure will start to be adopted by the wider Bittensor community. And we'll see more of this coming down the pipe, I'm sure.
Yeah, Mike, have you seen any builders wanting some of these new upgrades? Or is it tough to build on Bittensor currently? And do you think this will help?
You know, what I would say is, just in a general sense, whenever there's a revolutionary new technology, it starts off being extremely difficult to use. Like, if you think
Right.
about trying to send an email before simple mail transfer protocol, or, you know, trying to set up a Bitcoin wallet before there was kind of these easy hot wallet solutions, or, you know, a ledger. Um, it was obviously very difficult, very technical, and you had to have a deep understanding of the technology to use it. I think the same is true with Bittensor. As any technology matures, it gets easier and easier to use, and more user-friendly applications are built higher in the tech stack. And so I think this is, without candidly, having gone into detail about either of these SDK updates, I think this is just a natural kind of evolutionary step for the network, where networking protocols get easier and easier to use over time, and I think it's going to lead to more and more mass adoption.
Completely agree.
Yeah, anything that makes it easier to use Bittensor's, digital commodities or the information and outputs that are being produced is a better way of, spreading the TAO gospel, I guess.
Yeah.
Gospel of Rao. Love it. Great work, Manifold teams and Namare. Love to see it. Yeah, next up, I wanted to chat about these the betting subnets, these sports betting subnets. So specifically Bettensor and Sportstensor each released NFL predictions on their subnet. Pretty cool. It's interesting because now that we have this many slots, we can see that there's like a common theme. There's now 3 different sports betting subnets out there. What do you guys think? Do you think this is do you think the competition here is going to help produce something that's better, that is going to innovate faster?
I'll just say generally, like, I'm not a sports bettor. I decide to lose money in other markets. So not a sports bettor myself, but just want to point towards how important these types of things are for the general populace. For example, my brother is currently being onboarded to crypto through Polymarket, right? Like, this guy has never had any interest in financial markets or crypto for that matter. But hey, if I can bet on, Donald Trump saying Squidward or something in the next, debate, like, I'm going to put some money on it. And I think generally speaking, this market is just huge. And if people can kind of see these predictions, or if they can get better odds than, like the book in, Vegas, or a book in Vegas, like, it's going to onboard a lot more people. And we're already seeing that proliferation with Polymarket. And then you kind of see now Drift has their own prediction market product. These are just prediction markets at the end of the day, and they have PMF in crypto. So this will be really good for Bittensor in general.
Couldn't agree more with that. I think just like you said, these kind of Trojan horse applications, whether they're NFTs, whether, it's sports betting, whether it's political betting, whatever it is, that's what gets the retailer, the average everyday person talking about a new technology. And they are really Trojan horse, applications. I'll say one thing on kind of the competition between subnets. We know in economics, like, competition is a good thing for the end consumer. And I think when you have things like Bettensor and Sportstensor going head to head, and you have, maybe they're serving different markets. I don't want to necessarily pit them against each other, but you have multiple compute subnets. You're going to have multiple search subnets, image generation subnets that are competing. Actually, we helped structure one of the first subnet merger, actually the first subnet merger in the Bittensor space. There will be, acquisitions and mergers. There will be competition in which one wins out and, another gets deregistered. But all in all, that's what we want in any ecosystem, right? Is perfect competition. And that's literally what Bittensor is striving for, is perfect competition between miners and validators and network participants, but also for users to have access to choice as to what subnetwork is best for them to get the digital commodities that they need.
Competition is good.
Exactly.
Amen.
Just wanted to shout out the sleek new website from Sportstensor too. Very, very clean. A sucker for a new website. Yeah. Moving on, I wanted to talk a little bit about the subnets that launched this past week. We know we talked about some new slots. So what's actually occupying those slots? I wanted to shout out subnet number 38. These guys are working on decentralized distributed training. Bit of a mouthful, but basically what these guys are doing is, like on subnet 9, like the pre-training subnet, miners will go out and train their own models. And then once they're done training, they'll post it for to get ranked and get some weight But the other way you could do that, and what we're seeing in some other projects outside of Bittensor, like I think Prime Intellect is working on this, is distributed training. So everybody on their own node contributing to one model. And it's very difficult to do that because it's not traditional. I know usually when you're building these models, it's one giant data center with all of the GPUs hooked up like physically. So to do these distributed training sessions, it's requires a lot of coordination, which, you know, Bittensor is a coordination network. So I'm very excited to see how these guys do. They're working off the learnings from previous Subnet 25 HiveMind that was working on something similar. And that's also something really cool with these Bittensor subnets is even if something falls off, it's all open source. So say you have an idea how to resurrect this project with some tweaks, I think you can do it better. You have that opportunity. You can take that, build it, register, and try to build something new. But yeah, I'm really excited about this one. What do you guys think? Do you think this will take off?
I think distributed training in general has been such a hot topic lately. Noah's dropped their paper. Prime Intellect, I believe, dropped another white paper as well. If it wasn't Prime Intellect, I apologize for messing that up. But
Yeah.
somebody did. But the point is people are starting to realize that this is like a huge problem for the decentralization of AI in general. So it's like we've managed to somewhat decentralize the computing component, right? We've managed to decentralize aspects of the model development component, and now this distributed training component is a huge one that, you know, has a lot of technical, like fundamental technical difficulties in doing so. So it's cool to see these initiatives starting to kind of emerge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. This was a problem that we didn't even collectively know was possible up until I think it was I can't remember. I think it was Google that released the first paper, or maybe I'm mistaken. But yeah, Noose Research and Prime Intellect have been working on this for a while. They've been doing some deep research on, you know, distributed training and computing. I think it's extremely important. Reason being, what we've seen specifically with Bitcoin is that Bitcoin proved distributed compute scales far faster than centralized compute. Proof in the pudding is Bitcoin's network is 5,000 times larger than Google, than all of Google's servers combined in terms of hash rate, in terms of computing capacity. And Bitcoin's 15 years old. So what that showed is when you give people the opportunity to find lowest cost energy, to stand up computers anywhere in the world and put all of that computing capacity into one single network, you can scale much quicker than building physical data centers. And so with that kind of hypothesis in mind, there's so much stranded compute around the world, whether that's MacBooks, whether that's iPhones, whether that's, you know, large computers that that are not working at full capacity. If we wanted to build really, you know, efficacious models, we should be able to use all of that stranded compute to train as well. And, you know, the general kind of common knowledge was that you needed to have these computers close in close proximity because they need to, you know, ping communications back and forth whenever they learn or pass through the neural net, you know, more times. And I think what this distributed training is doing is more cycles through the neural net before it passes the learning information back to the network. And so it's been proven that, you know, this is either just as good or potentially better in some cases than centralized training. And that is a kernel of an idea that could spawn into a massive, you know, multi-billion-dollar industry.
Completely agree. Yeah, and I think I read somewhere that there's even a limit to having a co-located data center because you can't bring down the power grid. You know, there's only a limit to how much energy you can produce in a certain location. So even these large conglomerates eventually will have to do some kind of distributed training. So it's really cool to see the cutting edge, the bleeding edge of this technology being experimented with crypto assets and with crypto technology behind it all. So very pumped for subnet number 38. Hope you guys push the envelope. One more subnet that launched this week actually is SafeScan. So this one's really cool. They're working on cancer detection. So Subnet 46 just launched their first, I guess, minimum viable product is going to be working on melanoma detection on like basically just in images. So you can have this app on your phone. You got this funky mole you want to check out. So you take a picture of it, it sends it to the miners, and they run it through their ML models to give you like a prediction, like, should you get this checked out by a real doctor or something like that. And I think this is just huge and very relatable for a lot of folks. So I think this one can have a big impact. What do you guys think?
I think like a lot of these diagnoses, or however the plural term for that is like going to be outsourced to AI completely. Because I don't know, like, why should I go into the doctor and he asks me, oh, you have a cough, you feel this symptom, you feel this symptom, you feel this symptom. And then the margin for being misdiagnosed is so much higher by a human who, you know, especially now when how easy it is to cheat through exams for, you know, med school, right? Like, we're going to be having doctors who have completely just cheated their way through med school. And I think it's just going to be much more efficient to build a foundational model for a lot of diagnoses, specifically depending on the select, you know, symptoms that you're feeling. So I think decentralized science in general is just a huge opportunity to get more accurate, quicker, cheaper results for a myriad of different healthcare use cases.
Yeah, and I think we're kind of spoiled coming from a rich country, you know, that has reasonable healthcare and very high standards for doctors. But elsewhere, I mean, you might not have that. And something like this that's open source, that it's actually, you know, affordable, can be huge, especially for folks that don't have access to healthcare like we do.
Yeah,
that's a huge
affordable and unbiased, right? Like,
Right.
if you look at the incentive models behind the, you know,
Oh
the
my
medical
goodness.
space today, we're incentivized to be pushed, you know, pharmaceutical drugs as much as possible, right? So we, I think it's just a net benefit for humanity to have these kind of decentralized models starting to, to diagnose illnesses. It's only going to get better over time, and you know, the beauty of the Bittensor is ecosystem is it's Darwinistic, right? Like, better miners will continue to outcompete worse miners, and literally the, you know, the profession will continue to move faster and faster in the direction of evolution. But all that to say, I think just decentralized science is extremely important. You know, if you look at the fields of medical and education, they're a little bit walled gardens right now. I think that needs to be broken up, that needs to be decentralized, and really this is the technology to do it. So extremely excited for the future.
I think this is probably the coolest application for AI, to be honest. Like, this is the most meaningful, is pushing the boundary of what's possible in the healthcare space. And you want it to be open sourced. I mean, that's something that has to be open source. Like, you could probably argue, well, you know, open sourcing a chatbot to ask questions about the political stances and stuff like that is you could argue that that's really important. Obviously it is, and that's why people like Venice and projects like Venice are trying to figure out how to get rid of biases with general opinions on social you know, events and so forth. But the biases with when it comes to the medical side of things, like, yeah, it's really important, because I'm not going to go consult my Pfizer large language model on, you know, my health. So I'm not doing that. But yeah, that's a whole different conversation that I'd love to kind of like dive into another time.
Yeah, totally agree. So best of luck, Subnet 46. Wanted to close out with a cool update from Subnet number 43 Graphite. So they just completed their phase 1. So these guys are working on graph problems. And for folks that are not too into academia, they might not know that this is one large field of machine learning that's going on right now. If anyone's ever heard of like a traveling salesman problem, it's actually quite hard to solve. And machine learning models have become the way to do that. So they started off with basically like a minimum viable product with graph problems up to 250 nodes. And you can see they have this nice new dashboard, the improvement over time. So they just wrapped up their first phase. They got to a model that can solve this this node problem. And they're rolling out phase 2 right now. So it's going to be used with some common TSP libraries, the world and the Asia TSP libraries. And they're going to ramp it up to between 2,000 and 5,000 nodes. So just love to see the progress here. Love to see the progress in the whole research area, because I know that's a big focus of Bittensor.
For sure.
Agreed. Yeah, I think like even just looking at this graph without having deep understanding of what the subnet does as of yet. Yeah, up and to the right, but it just shows when you have real competition, and going back to the term, like if you have Darwinistic competition, the survival of the fittest is so real. And when you apply that to computers, it goes faster than any of us can even, comprehend. And so I think people are going to be very, very surprised at how quickly, subnets learn in this network, how quickly results get better, and, better than even human results. Perfect competition breeds great innovation, or new invention even. So really exciting.
Completely agree. All right. Well, that is all I had for this week. Do you guys have any topics you want to bring up? Anything you want to chat about?
No, we covered a lot. It was awesome. Really glad you joined us, Mike.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun, Mike. Anything you want to shout out? Anything if folks want to learn more about what you're doing, what should they go follow?
Yeah, you can take a look at our website. It's contango.digital, or our General TAO Ventures website, which is generaltao.ventures. If you have a subnet idea, reach out to me directly at mike@contango.digital, or on X at Mike Contango. Guys, it's been a pleasure chatting with you. Thank you for everything you do for the ecosystem. Thanks for keeping everybody up to date on the newest information in the Bittensor ecosystem. We need more people like you. So thanks very much. Appreciate you having me.
That means a lot, man.
Awesome.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe to the TAO Times newsletter if you want an even deeper dive into this week's updates. And if you want to join the conversation, come ape into the Blockmates Discord, and we'll see you all next week. See ya.